Welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. This is a podcast for male survivors of sexual abuse and assault, whether as a child or as an adult. Know that you are not alone and the abuse was not your fault. My name is Mike Chapman. I'm a certified recovery life coach and also a survivor. Let's find hope and healing together. And welcome to the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. I'm your host, Mike Chapman, and with me today is Scott Ralitz. More about him in a moment. If you would like to join us live for future episodes, you can feel free to do so and learn more about how to do so at my website, polarlifeconsulting.com/live. And if you are in the audience today, know we keep anonymity. We will only state your name if you manually type it in with your questions or comments in chat. So, with that, let me introduce Scott. Scott was born and raised in central Wisconsin, and last year he and his wife Dorothy celebrated 40 years of marriage, woohoo, and they lived 12 years as missionaries overseas, and they're now back home to be near extended family. And since 2020, he started to dig deeper into his past trauma, including childhood sexual abuse that had been buried. Much of it was forgotten, and some was just pushed aside with the help of spiritual bypass. And we will start the episode like we do most episodes with 4 questions. Now it's time for 4 questions, that part of the podcast when we get to know our guest a bit better by asking a few questions. Let's go. So, Scott, what is your favorite food memory?
Well, I would have to say I'm consistent. For some reason or another, I guess I have a lot of good memories with corned beef. My mother would make it for me when I was younger with the cabbage and the whole 9 yards.
Right.
And
so Irish family, I'm assuming, with that?
Not at all. I don't know
really?
What it is, but it's just
my wife is part Irish, and that is a main Irish dish, and yeah, she thoroughly enjoys that, and I don't mind it either.
And we lived out of state and then out of country for a while, but anytime we came back, my mom would make a point of preparing it because I'm the only son. I used to say the favorite son, but I'm her only son.
Yes, I understand. Yes, I'm an only son as well. So, but I know that's a very common immigrant dish, that corned beef and cabbage. So that sounds like a good Midwestern dish as well as Irish. So what is your favorite Christmas or holiday memory?
Okay, well, for this Christmas memory and holiday, I have to say it's my favorite, but it also happens to be one of the most traumatic.
Ooh.
We were living overseas and we were preparing to have 2 Russian teenagers, brother and sister, live with us, and it was going to be basically just a few days before Christmas that they were going to move in. The Sunday before the Christmas, I got home and I got an email from my sister saying that we tried calling you and couldn't get in touch with you. Unfortunately, your dad has passed away. And I just froze. I couldn't speak. I was just looking at the computer. My wife was preparing food in the kitchen. I went in there and it's like, I just pointed at the computer and just had her read it. And it's like, but make this short. The day that my dad would have had his funeral was the day that the 2 teenagers were going to move into our house. And stay with us. And I prayed about it, and I felt like I can best honor my father by being the best father to these 2 children.
Absolutely.
I wrote a letter trying to explain that and had them a letter to be read at the funeral. My nephew and my brother-in-law both took turns reading parts of it at there.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was, my wife and I never had any children of our own. So that was part of what made it so special, is we had them living with us. And then a number of months had passed, and Sergey, the older one, told us that was the best Christmas that he ever had because their
Uh,
family life was so crazy all the time.
right.
So,
Right. Wow. Yeah, great story. I know similarly with my own life, I was there. My mother was in Nevada and I'm in North Carolina. She died about 8 years ago. And I was there in the hospital when she was dying and was there when she passed. But I had work commitments and we didn't know. I mean, you can't plan. And I had a return plane ticket and I had to get back to work. So I was not able to be there for her funeral, but I was able to write something. And that my sister ended up reading that for the service. So yeah, I was able to share a part of myself, but I had to get back, family commitments, my own children, and so forth. So
sure.
yeah, it's hard. You want to be there, but then, yeah,
I'll just interject that part of what I think played a part in it is because that in the previous August, just 4 months beforehand, we were not planning to go to America, but God directed us to come back just for 2 weeks. We needed to get new visas, but
right,
normally we never take such a short trip because it's kind of hard on us. And also, it's, I mean, it's a big expense to do it, but we're supposed to go back, and it's just for 2 weeks because we had commitments. We had to be back for
right.
start of school and a number of different things. And so during that 2 week time, I got to see my dad 3 times, and one of those times I spent almost most of the afternoon and most of the day with him. And the very last time I saw him and we were saying goodbye, my dad said that he was proud of me.
Oh,
And that was probably the first time in my life I ever remember him saying something like that. And so when we heard the news that he passed away, it was like, wow, that's why it was so important for us to go back to, we had that touch of healing for both of us, I'm sure.
right. Yeah, having those precious moments, not even realizing those would be the last ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a few moments like that with my mom as well before she passed. So, wow. Wow. So, what is your favorite church or house of worship memory?
Well, I have to admit that it has to be the day I got married
Oh, yes.
because I, in some ways, although I was the youngest in the family, we went to church when we were younger, but basically, my family didn't have any concept of what it means to be a Christian. I got saved when I was almost 20, and it was kind of a radical change that happened in my life that I'll probably go in further later. I wanted our wedding, and my wife agreed. We wanted to honor God and hopefully sow some seeds of what God has done in our lives and show it. So we had a little bit of praise and worship. We just honored God, and our pastor even had a little, not necessarily an altar call, but it's like to encourage people. It's like how important God is in our lives, Jesus, and all they need to do is call on them, call on his name, and he'd answer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what is your favorite scripture or any inspirational quote that has helped you on your spiritual journey, and what about it speaks to you?
Well, Galatians 2:20, ever since I first got saved, always stuck out to me that I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives within me. And there's more to it, but in some ways it kind of goes back and forth because I feel like all my memories or whatever is like there's a little bit of trauma in that too because I really had a bad self-image, and it was
Right.
like I hated my life, and before I got saved I was close to committing suicide, but I put my life in his hands. He took it. Now the life that I now live, I live in Christ Jesus. But like I'm kind of mentioned in my intro, that I didn't realize until many years later is a spiritual bypass. It was like, okay, all things have become new. I'm a new creation. And I'm just going to forget about all the stuff that happened to me when I was younger because I'm a new person.
Right. Right.
That worked for a bit, but that stuff just kind of festered inside, and under certain circumstances would come to a head.
Now, you mentioned it before, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. For that listener out there who has not heard that term spiritual bypass, what does that mean specifically to you?
Well, yeah, it's still kind of a newer phrase to me, but it's like as soon as someone explained it to me, it's like, oh, yeah, that's it. But it's almost like taking your pain and saying, well, God made everything new, and so you should just kind of put the past behind you and just know that Jesus has forgiven you, so all that stuff is behind you. So it's like, that's right, but if you just make everything so super spiritual, you are not dealing with it.
Right. It's like minimizing something with a spiritual filter attached to it, or spiritual language. And like, oh, this horrible thing happened to you. Well, God uses everything for good. Or it's like, okay, well, fine, but my guts are spilled out everywhere. I'm still dealing with this trauma. And that is an episode of a podcast with Drew Boa. He does a full explanation on spiritual bypass and what it means, and I'll have links to that in the show notes for sure. So with that, thank you for that. Would like to hear more about your story, and like a lot of our stories of trauma, it can jump around the timeline as things get disclosed, and so feel free to jump around. And then from there, I would like to hear more about your healing journey, what things have worked, what things haven't worked, and then from there, what you're doing today.
Okay, so in less than a month, I'll be 63 years old. I was somewhat of a typical kid raised in the 60s, where I guess they call them free-range children.
Yes.
We could just kind of cruise wherever we want to.
Yep. Until the street light comes on, that's when you got to be home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, well, I have 3 older sisters, and I'm going to just start with the first memory.
And you're the baby, right? Out of 3?
Yeah, I'm the baby.
I'm the baby with 2 sisters. Yeah. So, yeah, that's always fun.
So I don't know who originally went about 6 blocks away, maybe a little bit more. There was an ice skating rink. And my sister, who was just a little bit older than me, we were done with ice skating and we were on the way home. For some reason or another, I'm only 4, maybe 5 years old. Even though we had a hill to walk up, we were still in our ice skates. We didn't switch back, even though there was a warming tent or building that we could get in our boots. We walked home on our ice skates, and we were just like 2-3 blocks away. This car pulls up and then pulls into the driveway. The door opens up, and there's the man. He says, "Hey, come over here. I want to show you something." And I'm the little kid. What does he want? That's what I'm thinking. My sister, because she's 2 years older than me, I don't know if they had the actual phrase of stranger danger, but she was older. She knew better. She said, "Scott, let's go." But I wanted to see what was going on. I didn't understand. So I was like, what? And then finally she just kind of grabbed me and we run about halfway around the block, thinking that this guy is going to follow us and maybe just pick us up. I don't know. But we pull around and we get away, and we did see him go beyond. I don't know if he was actually looking for us, but he just ran away. Fill in the blanks because my brain doesn't fill it, but I even just recently asked my sister about this incident. He said that actually this guy was eventually caught after a dozen times of showing himself to people in the neighborhood.
So he was a flasher, basically?
Yeah, I'm not sure if he did anything else or not, but it was always to very young children.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if I even saw anything, but we went home. We told my mom, and we called the authorities, and someone came over and talked to us gently, and we tried to explain it. And I don't remember exactly the timing on this because I was so young, but my dad eventually came, and I'm not sure if the police were there, but he wanted to know, what's the story? What's the story? What was going on? And basically, if I remember it right, all I remember is from that situation, all I remember is My sister said, and Scott wanted to see what was in there, what was going on. And my dad picked up on that and says, what? What? Is there something wrong with you? Are you a pervert? I mean, and he, from that moment on, even though I was a little kid, I felt bad. So I didn't know what else. A number of weeks later, actually, it was probably, I mean, because it actually had to have been in the summertime then, because we don't, I'm thinking ice skating before. But anyways, sometime later, I was with, we're just once again alone. I was met with a girl who's probably my sister's age, and we were playing around at her house. I don't know where anybody else is. There's a young boy who's younger us, probably like 3 years old. I don't know, maybe he had his diapers on, but it was summertime now. And for some reason or another, I don't know if this girl that I was with also was privy of this one person being that the other gentleman showed himself to her, but we told this little boy that he should take off his diaper or underwear. For some reason or another, I don't remember why, but we did this and we thought it was so funny. But he went and his mom found out that we told him to do it, and then called up my friend's neighbor's mom, who told my mom, and was like, what's going on with you? So the discussion became, oh, yes, little Scotty's a pervert. Let's kind of just step away from that just a little bit. For some reason or another, I was not so blessed to have pneumonia about 6 times between being a baby and into 2nd grade. I know the last time it didn't feel so bad, but I remember that I had pneumonia. The feeling, it's like something that's is burned into my lungs as it burned into my memory, how horrid it was. Right. But the reason I bring that up is I missed a lot of school in kindergarten and 1st grade, and maybe like a typical young boy, I wasn't ready for school. So because I kept on getting behind in school, and I probably didn't have the mentality of I wasn't a studious person. By the time I was actually in 1st grade, they already labeled me as mentally slow. And they started putting me in special ed classes. I guess the best thing that happened to me at around that time was we moved from one city to another city. When we did, I actually started 1st grade. I repeated 1st grade, but it was in a different school, so nobody else really knew my situation.
Right. Did your parents do that on purpose? I know some do that, so then it's less of a stigma.
I think it was by the grace of God, even though, because my dad had started a new business, and it was in the town that we moved to. It took some time for us to make the move from one city to the other, although they weren't too far away.
Right.
But it was always, as far back as I can remember, the phrase about Murphy's Law, if anything that could go wrong, it would go wrong. I literally told people the bad confession of, I'm a living example of Murphy's Law, because I always felt like I always felt like bad things were happening to me.
Yeah.
It became evident my dad was a good businessman. Like I said before, we went to church occasionally. My mom was in the church choir, so she went more often. But my dad called himself a Christian, but he was a workaholic. I can understand that. We're in the Midwest. That's everybody. But he also was an alcoholic, and he never, ever admitted that throughout his whole life. The arguments between my parents, between my siblings, and my dad, it just built and built and built, and as far as I remember, my dad didn't do anything to me physically. Looking back, I kind of wondering if I didn't have an opportunity to talk with him, or even family, friends that might have known what the situation actually was with him and his father. But whatever my mom says is like, I don't know what, she never understood. I mean, they were good, nice people, but there was always tension between them.
Right.
And in fact, I didn't find out until after I graduated high school and was married that my dad's parents really didn't have anything to do with our family until I was born.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, and all of a sudden they showed interest. It's like, well, I felt like I turned my back on whatever you say God is, because one thing I did hear people talk about is God is like your father. And if anything, if God is like my father, I didn't want anything to do with it. So I argued with people with God. It wasn't like I was agnostic. I was atheist. I was bad at it. And I was turned my back on anything that had to do with God.
Right.
But that also means when you do that, you're also opening up yourself to more hurt, as I find out later on in life.
Right.
And although I never wanted to be like my dad, good old Wisconsin, I don't know what it was in other states, but when I was 18, I could drink beer and whiskey legally. Right. And it was really easy, actually, to get my hands on alcohol before that.
Right.
I kind of joke around with my coworkers now that I bet you I spent more time in a bar than most of the people I know just in my childhood, because I literally felt like I grew up in a bar stool. I was like, anytime I think my mom wanted my dad to spend some time with me. Okay, so what does that mean? I sit next to him while he drank his beer, and I would drink Dr. Pepper and eat Slim Jims, but
right.
There was no relationship there. He was talking to other people. So I did start drinking, and before my freshman year, 3 different occasions specifically, I drank so much that I don't remember any of the night.
Right.
People, when they find out that I don't remember, they love it, and then they fill in the blank. One of the times when I was my freshman year in college, I don't think it really happened, but it was enough that someone said that, oh yes, you got drunk and you were having oral sex with the guy in the other room. So it's like...
Yeah, true, not, are they just yanking your chain, or,
Yeah, but I should go back and say I wasn't athletic at all in school. I never went out for sports. My dad always complained that I was not playing with the boys. Why aren't you playing baseball? Why aren't you going out and playing basketball? Well, I don't have any memory of him throwing even a baseball with me.
Right.
Or playing horse. We had a thing. My sisters and I would play horse all the time in our driveway.
Right.
With basketball. But it's like, he never did. But he always expected me to be doing these guy things. And then said, what's wrong with you? Are you gay? I was like,
yeah.
Well, maybe he didn't use that phrase. Maybe he was just, you're a girl.
Right.
And I do have to admit that there was a phrase that I went in my head. I don't know if I actually heard it come out of his mouth or if it was somebody else, but it was, my bedroom was separate from all the other bedrooms in the house. Right. Mine was by the kitchen. So sometimes I'd overhear my parents talk in the kitchen or fight. But I swear I heard him say that, thought I was going to have at least one boy in the family, but it seems like I only have 4 girls. And just because I wasn't being guy enough.
Right.
And that kind of opened the door to other things. I didn't trust him because of the issue that I had before. Right. There was a couple of incidences that were non-sexual, but it was definitely bullying through junior high and high school that were absolutely horrid. I didn't tell my mom about it until after my dad died, and I was 45, 50 years old, that this one incident happened at school, and I was totally humiliated, but I never told my mom because it had to do with a teacher at our school who he happened to be the husband of a good friend that she played tennis with. It's like I felt like I couldn't trust anyone in my family because I thought I was bad.
Right.
So there was a couple of times I did work for my dad all through high school. And then actually past high school, I went to college, but then I came back. I was just a glutton for punishment. But there was good things about it too.
Right.
But there was one gentleman that who worked for my dad that would not just put his hands on me, but he would put his hands very obviously on suggestive areas of my body. And it's like, I thought you'd like it.
And this is what, while you were in high school?
Yes, I was probably a senior in high school.
And how old was this
or
person?
close to the age. Yeah, well, he was 30s.
Okay, and this was...
This was a person who just worked in my dad's grocery store.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
So my dad, yeah, he owned the business in town. Everybody knew my dad in town. That's why I don't necessarily want to say the name of the town, but they can Google it. I never told anybody about this until many years later. I just asked one of my other coworkers who was about the same age as me, did this person ever do anything to you, or did you hear anything suspicious? No, not at all. And this guy, anytime he did, if I got too mad, he's like, oh, I'm just joking about it. It's like, yeah, but why do you do it all the time? And I didn't say anything because I'm afraid, I'll be the one who gets labeled. And I was like, okay, maybe there is something wrong with me. Is there a big sign on my head that says I'm the queer boy? I don't know. And to be honest, there's not, little by little, some other memories have popped up.
Right.
The problem is I've known for a long time, but it was like this dark shadow that's hovering over me, that there is something, there's like a black spot in my memory. I've got a lot of memories, but then for some reason or another, this time period is really not even hazy, but it's just dark. And anytime I think back to that time period, it would bring me trauma. I could feel it in my gut, and I didn't know what it was, but it's like after I became a Christian, it's like, well, you know what they say, those memories, you can't trust those memories. I've seen a movie about that, and they found out it's all hogwash.
Yeah, no. There's a whole bunch of research on repressed memories and so forth. And the people who were most vocal had abused their children, and their children came out with these repressed memories. And of course, they wanted to deny it because they didn't want to admit what had happened. So it must be the children's fault. The children must be making it up, and they were the ones who were behind it. And the one group who was most vocal about that, they now have dropped off, and they are no longer speaking out about it. So, yeah. Repressed memory is definitely a real thing.
Just recently I remembered I was staying overnight. I think my parents were on vacation, so I had to stay a couple of days with another family. And there's a girl who was 3 years older than me, and then a boy who was actually mentally challenged, but we were about the same age, and we always got thrown together somehow. But anyways, I don't know if we slept every night down in the basement, but the three of us were together. And I remember, and she's 3 years older than me. I'm only probably 11. I don't know how. Had our hands roaming each other. But why would I do that? I totally forgot about that until a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, okay, maybe I somehow was the problem. I know my dad, he left out, like I said, he owned a grocery store. We had dirty magazines. They weren't sold out in front. They were behind the counter. But if anybody wanted them, all they had to do was ask for them. But every single one of us guys at the store knew exactly where they were. And almost all those magazines ended up, at least temporarily, in the men's bathroom in the store.
Right.
So, as far back as I can remember, I was looking through those magazines, and after a while, I was like, I don't want to just look them at the store. I want to take them home. So it's like, by the time I graduated high school, I had quite a big stack of them. And it wasn't the pictures really. I mean, this was before VCRs and obviously videos.
Or internet, yes, yes.
It was nudie pictures, whoopie-doo.
Mm-hmm.
But what really warped my mind was they had the letters that people wrote in. Just reading those letters, that was actually worse than porn magazine because almost anything went in those stories.
Right.
Let's get on to something a little bit better first in the transition. I got saved toward the end of my first year in college, mostly because I was at the bottom of the barrel. I was denying God. I was failing at school. My roommate in college, he was such a good kid when he was in high school, but as soon as we go to the university, his idea of having fun was let's try every single drug he can get his hands on. And then he was always bringing girls home or to our dorm that we shared. And so we got high and our grades went down. I knew I needed to change. A friend of mine, when I went back to my hometown, he was so excited about going to a church and he wanted me to go with him. It was on a Saturday night or something like that. Okay, whatever. So I went with him even though I really didn't want to. I don't remember any of this service. It was a small church or whatever, but it was a Holy Ghost revival. But anyways, everybody went up front after the service. And it's like, if you want prayer, come up front. And it's like, literally everybody went up front. And it's like, am I sticking out more like a sore thumb by staying there? Or should I just kind of start going up front so I'm pretending I'm a part of this?
Right.
Well, I went up front and boom, the Holy Spirit hit me. And it was like, wow. And it's like, this is the first time in my life that I heard the voice of God. And it's like, you cannot deny me any longer. Importantly, I love you. And it was like a hot knife to butter. It just melted my heart. And it's like, boom. I didn't necessarily understand everything, but it was during our week off of school. So actually, I went back the next week because this was a church that was really into water baptism. And it's like, you're not really saved unless you get water baptized. Well,
yeah.
Yeah, but I appreciated it anyways because I didn't really understand salvation before. But when I went back and they explained it and I was actually water baptized, it was like, okay, I got it. And so I went back to school and before I moved back to the school, I grabbed my old Bible that I got when I was, quote, confirmed Christian as an 8th grader or whatever it was. And I started reading it. And I read almost through the whole Bible, other than the minor prophets, in about 2 months. I got addicted to the word. I couldn't get enough of it. It was so exciting. God did a lot in my life. I mean, I got rid of all the porn magazines. He somehow cleaned up my mouth, but I had to walk things out.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about the trauma or the stuff that you had repressed, and you kind of opened that up a little bit, but it seems like more came forward later.
Yeah, a couple of different things, happened, but when I got saved, I really, I knew that I had trauma because my dad was an alcoholic.
Right.
So my mom and my sister, we all went to some Al-Anon teaching. We did 2 weeks of training, and that was very helpful. I understand some of those things.
Right.
And then I was thinking that, okay, I dealt with all the stress, and although I was still living at home, I quit school, and actually my parents kind of bribed me to leave the school I was in. They knew I was floundering. So they said if you go to the local university, that they would help me buy a car. That sounded great. But thankfully, I found a church, and I started going. I got into the university, but I started going to church, and I started dealing with some of the issues of being a son of an alcoholic. My mom, in the years before they got divorced, had temporarily left my father like 3 times. I'm not going to go into all that, but it's like at one point, and I understand back now, she had to leave. She had to leave to get out of the situation. She wasn't necessarily thinking of me, but I was there with my dad having to deal with him. But the more I became a Christian and I realized what I wanted to do with my life was not what I thought I was, God kind of changed my mind. I felt led to go into the ministry to be a missionary.
Right.
And so that first church that I got hooked up into, eventually I met my now bride, wife, and found out that she had a heart for missions. And so we did everything we could. I got in Bible school. We did missions training school, just full steam ahead. We did every type of ministry within the church. Just serving our hearts out. We moved to another state, did some more work in churches, never for pay. We always got our own jobs, but we're serving umpteen hours in other churches. I realized looking back that I was filling the roles of someone as like trying to make things right. I wanted to somehow preach to my father and get him saved. I wanted to be the hero. And so, and some of that is, I said I forgave my father, and then it's like all of a sudden something would happen and all those feelings would return. And I found out it's easy to say you forgive your father when you're 100 miles away, and it's even better when you're thousands of miles away. Right. But every time you get together with him, and he's still, while he was not drinking for a while, he was still dry drunk because he didn't deal with any of his crap. So he was the dry drunk, and he was good at tearing me down. And my wife said, I can't handle being in the same house with him, mostly because she saw what it was doing to me, because I was never rebellious. I was the one who froze. Anything that happened, I would just freeze. And that was part of the clue, is like, yeah, that would explain almost everything.
And that's
how many times?
A common reaction. It's the fight, flight. One of those, there's like 8 Fs. One is fawn or freeze, and it sounds like more freeze.
Yeah.
That was your response to a trauma response to that. And that's very common. That's how your brain responds to keep you safe, to keep you alive.
And it wasn't actually until going to Rush overseas, and then my dad passing away like he did. And actually, like, I know a lot of people, when they see their children growing up and struggling, that's when they realize some of the stuff that they were struggling with when they were a teenager, and it's like, or a child, and it's like, oh, okay. And so it was really hard because I didn't deal with this stuff. When I thought I was done dealing with, I never had a problem once again with looking at girly porn, but I found that all of a sudden I was attracted to gay porn, or I was attracted to some of that situation. And that threw me for a loop at first. And it's like, why out of nowhere it came? And it's like, I'm some of it is obviously daddy wounds. I never felt love, and I never had any good friends other than my coworkers when I was in high school. I never had any friends. I never played sports with anybody. And so I all of a sudden, at one point, I remember when I was overseas at a beach, having someone come up to me, and I mean, a guy. I was like almost freezing, and they put their hand on my chest or something like that. I was like, excuse me. Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't say anything. I would just freeze once again. This just sounds too familiar. And
so it reminded you of something?
And we came back here, back to the States at the end of 2007. And my wife works as an administrative assistant, but I'm basically just working a regular job, as they say.
Right.
And still involved in ministry and such. But one thing I never did is I've never been a part of men's ministry until recently. because I felt like I was the last person God would ever call to me to.
Mm.
I was like, I'm not an example of a good man. But it was exactly what God wanted, because it forced me to deal with some of these issues.
Right.
I had to actually do things that in some ways not necessarily traumatized me, but it's like it put me right on the edge, and it's like I had to do it. Why am I feeling that way? So COVID-19 happens. God uses something horrid for something wonderful. I started listening to Drew Boa. I started listening to Pure Desire podcasts, a number of other podcasts. And it's like, and I started communicating with other guys, and it was giving me insight what's going on. And so I started having victory, because no matter whatever my problems, I think the good Christian man. One thing that always haunted me, and with shame always involved with it, is masturbation. It was like, it doesn't matter how many times I spend time with my wife in physical relationship, this dude needed to have some me time. And that brought shame. But it was like I couldn't figure out what it was. And a lot of it was my way of dealing with stress. It was my way of dealing with stress when I was a little kid. And that's what they say. Men don't get addicted to porn or other things. It's boys who do.
Right.
We're just trying to figure out how to deal with this pain and these crazy things. So it's like, but we just need to grow up spiritually, but also, understand who we are and how God's made us. I thank God that He gave me a penis, but God wants me to use it properly. And He doesn't shame me, but I need to grow up. So I found some men. We actually just recently changed churches because I felt like I was not getting the support or maybe acknowledgement that this is an issue that guys are dealing with now. And I found another church.
Right. Even in the church, and especially in the church, surveys are out there. And it's like it's like 3/4 of Christian men deal with pornography or sexual impurity within the church. So it's huge.
I had an awesome weekend just this last weekend. We talked about this stuff. We were honest with one another. We prayed with one another, and we're making connections where we have making the connection, so we'll be talking with one another, not just say, oh, just pray for me because I've fallen. It was like, no, it's like we need to dig deeper and hold ourselves accountable in other ways other than did you sin or not. It's how are you doing with your stress? How are you handling certain things?
Now, going back to the repressed trauma, sounds like some of that stuff has come forward, and you've got more details as to what actually has happened in your past. Is that true?
Little by little, things started to pop up. Did actually get an actual counselor, went to a clinic and made arrangements to get someone to talk to. We both decided at onset that we were not going to necessarily dig into those at that point. We were just going to deal with certain things that I needed to talk with. The trauma that I knew for sure was still right there. So we went through those things, and I felt that at that point I needed to maybe not do any more with him, but I was on a good path. Doing the couple of times I was with your group and with husband material when we had our online connecting and doing the small groups within that. But I'm at the point now that I don't know what steps that I will be taking. In some ways I might be like, do I really want to open up this Pandora box, or am I going to just wait for God to do something about it? Or should I do some, I've read about and heard about much of this ways to kind of unlock these memories in a healthy way.
As someone who's gone through that and still has repressed memories that I know have not been all the way divulged, your body and brain needs to know you're in a safe place to be able to deal with it, then yeah, the truth will start coming out, though I call it a vault, but it's a leaky vault. So it kind of informs your decisions anyway, and has ever since the trauma happened, whatever got locked up. So, and then when you are able to open the door, then so many things make sense. Like, but it sounds like you know something sexually traumatic happened when you were young, but you don't necessarily know what or where, but you have clear memory blocks, contradiction in terms, but clear points of time where you know it's very cloudy and very traumatic when you think about those, it sounds like.
Yes. I mean, there was one memory that I remembered pretty clearly, and it had to do with a sibling. And a number of years ago, I asked that sibling about it, and no, that never happened. And even another sibling, when I asked about certain things, I said I had a memory about I was supposed to go somewhere, but I ended up going with someone else to their house for some reason or another. And she just like looked at me, really? You were never supposed to go to that house. I mean, those we knew. And I was like, I got this, I'm not a little kid, but I'm not going to ask her any more questions about that. I want someone going to ask her to clarify, but she's not, I never felt safe in her presence either. So it's like, I mean, I love all my sisters, but it's like something, we had a crazy house.
Right.
I mean,
yeah. Yeah. So you still haven't resolved the issues of these repressed memories that you believe you have, but it sounds like you're still getting help to help you continue to heal. So what kind of things have helped? And you've mentioned some of these things so far. What things have you tried that have been helpful? And what things have you tried that have been less than helpful?
Well, even though I've heard so many people tell me how important it is to take a journal and write in it,
right.
I've tried that a number of times, and that almost, I mean, until really recently, because actually now I have started doing that, and it has been very helpful. But for the longest time, the idea, even I get a journal and I'd start writing something. And I even tried doing it on a computer, putting a password on it, because I don't want anybody to read whatever I write.
Right.
Because when I was a kid, I played a number of musical instruments, and the only time I could practice at home was if everyone else was gone, not even out of the room, out of the house.
Right.
Nobody could hear me. I wouldn't do it. I had such a fear. It was like, I felt like no one can know. No one can know. And it's just like, why? And it's like, don't write anything down, because if someone sees what you wrote, they'll know your story. I was like, where did I get this from? And I was like, this.
I know what helped me, Male Survivor, which is a online forum for survivors of abuse, been around for almost 20 years now. Online forum, they strive for anonymity. So you come up with a fake profile, fake username, and then you can go and just dump, because it is public, it is Googleable, so which is actually part of its power, because you have 20 years of men going on sharing their stories. Sure. Thousands upon thousands of male survivors. And when I started in 2019, similar journey, I found that, and I just posted so much because I could do it anonymously and I can get very specific. But it's not only sharing your story, you post it on there and you get feedback from all these guys who've been there. It's like, okay. And so you have all this dialogue back and forth, anonymous, but then you read other stories, and there's a search bar. You can search for anything, and there's a lot on there that you can find, and you find so much commonalities and so forth. And it's a safe-ish place, just like any online thing. There's going to be people who are less than safe, so you have to be careful when you get too private with some of these people. But yeah, it was a wonderful place to share my story. I try to create a similar environment for that within Husband Trail with our CSA fellowship group there. So, and there is a spirituality section within Male Survivor, though it's kind of in a ghetto area and it's anything goes, but that's really the only place you can talk about spirituality in there. Main place, people, which I get because there's a lot of church hurt, a lot of abuse happens in churches. So, yeah, I get it why it's very, very sensitive spirituality for a lot of people. So they enclose it in there. So I wanted a safe place within HM to have that. And that's so helpful. But they say one of the key things to help you in your healing from any kind of childhood trauma is autobiographical journaling, whether that's online, whether it's pen to paper, whether it's coming on a podcast and sharing your story, whatever it is, getting it out of your head and sharing it, even if it's not with another person, but getting it out helps so much to heal. So yeah, absolutely. Please continue.
My mom, who's still alive, she just turned 90 last month.
Wow.
2 years ago, she said to me that I really think you should write your story. Write it down and let people, if it gets published or not, but I believe you should write your story. And I haven't really shared hardly anything with it, but I felt like I've asked her a few things and I made her think, and she's become a Christian now. So I almost thought that was a kind of a God wink or whatever. It's like, yeah, it's time for me. So I've been able to write down parts of my story, and I was like, put a bunch of empty spots and then just try to fill in the blank and just write what I have in my heart, and then I'll fill in the blank later. And it's been cool to see some of the memories and how things are coming together. And then how, I mean, just even by going into this new church, I've made a lot of really good connections with other guys, and this last weekend was pretty awesome, hearing other people share their stories and their struggles. I mean, and it's like the whole time I was doing ministry in these other places, men, come on, Sherry. I mean, I know we're different for women, that we're just not blah, blah, blah with our feelings, but it's like we can't hold in our struggles.
Right.
And hide it from every other person. We need to let our brothers around us know that we are struggling. And otherwise, we think we're all alone. And it's like there were 30 of us guys, and it was amazing to hear them pour out their hearts and then seeing God doing something in their heart.
Right. Absolutely. So working with other men, I know helping others kind of helps us too on our journey as we help others. I know when I've been small group leader or whatever, yeah, I learn probably more than the people I'm supposedly teaching. So anything else that you've tried? It sounds like you've been to some therapy as well, and that's been helpful.
Yeah, just recently I found out they're not in my hometown or the closest town that we go to church in, but in other cities, at least in central Wisconsin, there are 2 different churches that are now doing some sort of pure desire work. And also, I mean, I guess because I heard about pure desire first and then through Drew's husband material afterwards, it's like really like the line upon line, and in a lot of all the tools that are in the toolbox that they talk about. It's not enough just to wish yourself out of the funks. Or there's tools to learn about your emotions. Guys do have emotions. We just don't know what in the heck emotions are. So it's like, okay, get the emotion wheel. What are you feeling? Okay, where do you feel that? And why do you feel that? Or I love Drew's floss. Talking about don't run away from your fears and your temptations. Let's look at this. What are you dealing with? These temptations. What's the cause of it? It's only when we deal with it honestly and open up our hearts to getting wisdom from God about this, get the healing we need, then these things won't have such an effect on you.
Right, absolutely.
So, I mean, I believe I told you earlier, not today, but the first time I heard about the book about sexual abuse, men.
Mike Lewis?
No, he's part of
Doug Carpenter.
husband material. Yes, carpenter.
Yes,
I
Secret Shame.
bought his book.
Secret Shame.
Halfway through with it, and I was reading at night. And ironically, it was like right after I listened to a podcast as he was a guest. Maybe I just OD'd on this information. I threw it across the room, and that was more than a year ago. That was 18 months ago. I cleaned up the bedroom, but I put that book away. I never got back to it. That's the first thing on my list. I got to finish reading that book.
Right.
And just deal with it. That violent reaction sort of is what was like, okay, I can't deny that any longer either. Something did happen, and I have
Buttons
to
are
deal
getting
with
pushed.
it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I'm looking forward to what I was saying before. There are two different churches are going to be starting at two different levels, the Pure Desire program. And I know I cannot teach it unless I go through it. And I think I could definitely use more healing and actually being in a group of guys that are on the same path. And so I'm looking at in September joining one of those groups that'll be actually face-to-face groups. And seeing where that leads me. I'm hoping that I can actually start the groups in my hometown.
Right.
Here.
Excellent. So speaking of which, good segue. So anything else you're doing today, these days, that you want to share?
Just being there to open up your heart whenever there's a chance and to talk with people. And it seems like every time I do share my story, there's less shame, there's less pain, there's other crazy things. I'm learning how to deal with my emotions.
Right.
So, and
absolutely. So any final thoughts or final words for that survivor out there listening today?
Well, like you say, it's like there are definitely a lot more people out there who have been abused and are just living in shame. And they think that they're the only ones, but they're not. There are a lot of people who are dealing with a lot of crap in their lives, and God knows. And just because he knows doesn't mean that he's allowing it to happen. Well, it happens to us, but he wants to share his love through his Holy Spirit, but he also wants the body of Christ. He wants other people to share his love and be there to put his arms around us. It's like, I understand. Let's walk together, and we can do this together.
Right, absolutely. And thank you so much for being here, Scott. And with that, we'll see you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast. If you would like to learn more about my coaching with Polar Life Consulting, where I provide one-on-one coaching and group coaching, both with a focus on healing for male survivors, reach out to me at polarlifeconsulting.com. That is polar spelled P-O-L-A-R. I would love to hear from you. I want to hear your story. If you would like your story featured on this podcast, contact me via my website. If you like this podcast, please rate and review, because that's how other people can find me, and I really want to spread this message of healing and hope to others. And remember, you are not alone. Healing is possible, and the abuse was not your fault. Let me repeat that. The abuse was not your fault. See you next time on the Healing for Male Survivors podcast.